Life Check Yourself with Warren Farrell. From role mate to soulmate. How to unlock deeper love and connection with your partner. Ladies, welcome to another episode of Life Check Yourself. Oh, this is going to be a doozy. I have Dr. Warren Farrell here. He's a Ph.D., a New York Times and internationally best-selling author. He has coached couples and psychologists nationwide regarding couples communication for 30 years. So if you feel like your person doesn't hear you, understand you, make sure you listen to this whole episode. He was recognized by the Financial Times of London as one of the world's top 100 thought leaders. He's been a pioneer in both the women's movement. He's been elected 3 times to the board of the National Organization for Women and the men's movement, called the Martin Luther King of the Men's Movement by GQ. We're going to talk a lot about that. He advocates for a gender liberation movement, freeing both sexes from rigid roles of the past. Amen. His books have been published in 19 languages. He's titles Why Men Are the Way They Are. That was done in 1986. We'll talk about, are they still the way they are? Have they changed? The Myth of Male Power, The Boy Crisis. And he has a brand new book out called Role Mate to Soulmate. Came out in 2024. And this came from his course on the art and discipline of sustaining, loving, intimate relationships. And he's been with his wife together for more than 30 years. So you walk the talk. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to start. We were kind of talking off camera before we started about this thing that you label the boy crisis. And I was like, what does that mean? And so I'll tell everyone the story that I told you. So I'm really excited. I'm a part of this program called Partners for Youth. And I'm mentoring a young girl in our community. And she just turned 14. And my kids are like in their late 20s now. So I'm sort of like trying to figure out what is it like to be a teenager today. And I asked her, I'm like, that question, I said, what's it like being a teenager today? And she goes, well, first of all, boys have no brains. And I thought, oh, they've never had no brains. You know, that's what women say. But then you and I were talking and you told me that actually there is this boy crisis is it in our country or is it global?
No, it's global. It's in almost all developed countries. Because in developed countries, people have the choice of being able to be married or divorced. And usually, if there's a divorce, oftentimes the boys in particular don't have a male role model. And they don't have permission socially to express their feelings as much as girls do. And so girls, if they're having their period, they can talk to their mom about it. Boys, if they're having some equivalent version of maybe doing too much touching of themselves, it's hard for them to talk to their mom about that. And so, in all 63 of the largest developed countries, boys are falling behind girls in almost every area, especially reading and writing, which are the biggest predictors of success or failure. Usually IQs go up about 10 points for each generation, and boys' IQs have been going down. So your friends or your mentees' point was not completely out of whack. And so, but the boys that are by far, there's about 10 causes of the boy crisis. The last book I wrote is called The Boy Crisis, before Role Mate to Soulmate. When I submitted it to my publisher, I submitted 10 causes. But as I started researching those 10 causes, I found that by far and away, the most important cause is that the boy crisis resides where dads do not reside. That boys that have minimal father involvement that are called dad deprived, what I call dad deprived boys. These are the boys that don't usually have postponed gratification, and they don't have postponed gratification because dads tend to be very good at enforcing boundaries, requiring their sons, even if they cry or they protest, to say sorry. This was what I said you needed to do. You needed to turn off that iPhone, and you needed to do homework. Otherwise, the iPhone would be taken away from you. Or we would take the computer out of the bedroom. We'd put you in the middle of the kitchen, or the middle of the living room until you learn until your grades improve. Oh no, no, Dad. And, dads will say, sorry, I don't care how much you cry. That's the end of it. You had a chance. And that creates resilience and postponed gratification. And then the boys feel proud of themselves because they accomplish things and they're respected. And so that creates a very different trajectory for many boys.
So what's going on now? So so if they're not getting these sort of boundaries, how are they being taught, the lessons of being a grown ass human today that is causing the crisis? What's going on out there?
They're often, so let's make it clear. Moms tend to set boundaries more than dads, and dads tend to enforce boundaries more than moms. So when we do studies of things like bedtime, moms will set earlier bedtimes, dads will set later bedtimes, but the children actually get to bed earlier under dad's supervision. Because let's say it's 8:30 bedtime, and the child comes up to mom and says, "Oh, Mom, I didn't finish my homework." Mom will often empathize. "Oh my goodness, I don't want you to go to school without finishing your homework." Like, you could have done your homework before, sweetie, but okay, I don't want you to go to school without finishing it. So, all right, you do it now. And the kid's won. He's manipulated, or she's manipulated the mom for a later bedtime. Dad is more likely to do the same thing the first time around. But after the warning is that if in the future you don't get your homework done and you've had time to do it during the day, and you haven't made use of that time, you'll go to school without doing your homework. Now, if the couple is separated, you can imagine that the kid goes back to mom after a visitation with dad and says, Dad said I couldn't do my homework, and he sent me to school without my homework done, and you can imagine the misunderstandings that this creates. And it's one of the reasons why the children that do best after divorce have about an equal amount of time with father and mother, and that time and that the differences between dad style and mom style parenting are respected.
This is so interesting because I got divorced from my first husband when my youngest was 2 and my oldest was 8. Mm-hmm. And now they're in their late 20s, so we talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so I was living in LA for like 25 years, and I sold my house. And anyway, we had a lot of conversations about they always wanted to go, like when I was a young parent, the idea was like, oh, dad is more fun, right? So like we want to be at dad's house. And I was like the strict one, and I had all these rules. And when we were talking about it in reflection as they were older, they said, your house was the safe space, like that is where like the boundaries were. And that was the stability because they couldn't manipulate their dad. So it was almost like a little bit of a role reversal. But I really resonate with what you're saying because it was hard. They'd come back to my house and it was like, who are you guys?
Yes.
And then there was like a 1 or 2 day like adjustment period. So I can imagine how that's really hard for kids to not have that continuity. So what are some of the other causes that you discovered of this boy crisis in addition to the boundaries?
Yes, so the boy that doesn't get the boundary enforcement doesn't develop postponed gratification. And the postponed gratification is the single biggest predictor of success or failure. And so when the boy isn't able to sort of postpone that gratification and succeed, he finds that other boys don't respect him, girls are not attracted to him, he starts not respecting himself. He starts sliding into alternatives like, okay, I'll get involved with video games. Some boys take the video games so far that they actually identify as a person in a video game.
Right, right.
And then they get addicted to, and then of course the girls are rejecting them, so they start turning to porn. And then when finally a girl is attracted to them, they start feeling like they start treating the girl as somebody in the porn movie, and the girl feels disgusted, withdraws, and that reinforces the rejection. It reinforces the porn, and then they begin to start taking drugs and so on. And this is sort of the transition of the trajectory that many of these boys go through.
Oh my gosh, this is like so interesting. I feel so passionate about this teenage thing. That's why I got involved in this mentor program,
Yeah, which
because
is wonderful, by the way, that you're
thank
doing that.
you.
It's really
But it came from this place of, I'm in my late 50s. So in my town, it's a kind of a small town, but I have friends that are in their 70s and I have a lot of friends in their 40s. And so they're the ones that have the teenagers, right?
Mhm.
And they're completely just like all these different challenges than when my kids were challenges. And there is a lot of like isolating, staying in the room,
Mhm.
not interacting with other people, and they just don't know what to do. So if someone's listening and they're like, this is me, what are some suggestions that you make to sort of start to reverse this? And is it even possible? Are we going to be able to fix it?
Yeah. And first of all, if let's say you're divorced, worst case situation, make sure that there's 4 must do's that I talk about in the Boy Crisis book. One is that there be about an equal amount of time with father and mother.
Okay.
Number 2 is that the dad and mom not live more than about 20 minutes drive time from each other, so the children don't have to give up activities or friends in order to in order to continue and prosper. Number 3 is there's no that the children are not able to hear or detect any criticism of the other parent,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
the children, half of the children are the other parent, the genes, and the children look in the mirror, and the criticisms you give of the other parent are basically criticisms of that half of them. And then the fourth is that you be involved in couples communication counseling, not just during emergencies, but consistent, at least once a month, dealing with things where you can understand the dads can understand the mom's way of parenting and what the value of it is. The mom can understand the dad's way of parenting. In cases like you had, where it's reversed,
Yeah.
that's important to understand as well, and the value of both. And then the other important thing about dad style parenting is oftentimes dad style parenting is like roughhousing, and the kids will and the game will be from a dad's perspective. Okay, the 3 kids here, you go on the couch and you jump on my back, and the game is to see if you can pin me down before I pin the 3 of you down.
Right.
All right, Dad, it's really great.
We called that riling them up before
Rallying them up.
bedtime, pre-divorce. I was like, oh God, he's riling them up.
Yeah. And the mom looks at that and goes, "Oh my God, I feel like I have only one more child to monitor."
Yes.
Right. And,
You read my mind, Dr. Warren.
but there's enormous value to the roughhousing. Roughhousing is highly correlated with children being more empathetic.
Interesting.
Which
Okay, tell me more.
you never sort of logically think about empathy and roughhousing. They seem like the opposite.
Yeah.
But the reason they're not the opposite is because usually most dads, when the roughhousing goes too far, and let's say Jimmy sticks his elbow into Jane's sister's Jane's face, and Jane starts crying, and dad will usually say something like, "Okay, you do that one more time, and that's the end of the roughhousing." So the roughhousing is to children like a little treat is to a dog. And the dog learns, if it behaves differently, I'll get the treat. If I don't behave differently, I don't get the treat, the roughhousing. And so the children unconsciously are beginning to realize they have to think of their sister or brother's needs or feelings or fears. Otherwise, they'll start crying and I'll lose the roughhousing, my treat. And so they begin to start doing that. And they start, so these are just a couple of I know we're here to talk about the role mate to soulmate thing. And I said, but there is a connection between role mate to soulmate and the boy crisis.
Yeah, no, I totally get it, because this is and we'll make that transition, because there's so many people out there that are single or even in relationships, partnerships, marriage, whatever, that feel very frustrated by the way their partner is showing up.
Yes.
And do you think also that if you were going to put a time frame on when this boy crisis started, how long has this been dripping towards the point of crisis? How many years? Like, what generations are we talking about? So women who are single or in relationships can kind of understand the context.
Yeah, I was on the board of NOW in New York City in the 1970s, late 60s and early 70s. And I remember seeing the first evidence of this in the very early 70s. And actually, I brought it up to the board of NOW in New York City that I was on, and said, that there's a lot among parents that are divorced, the children, but particularly the boys, are not doing as well. The girls are also doing less well with divorced parents, and we realized that one of the reasons for that was that the boys were, for the most part, the children that weren't doing well were what I call dad-deprived children.
Right.
Now, and then as I did the research for the boy crisis, which came out in 2018, by that time I was able to identify more than 50 ways, 50 metrics that both girls and boys were doing less well. But the boys were more likely to have that less well be more extreme than it was for the girls. And so, but the overlap between boys and girls not doing as well when they don't have dad involvement. And of course, it's important to have mom involvement as well. And by the way, many moms break, their rears. They're, just, are dedicated and focused on raising their children. And most children raised without a lot of dad involvement still do reasonably well. And some children do extremely well. Clinton didn't have much dad involvement, and Obama didn't either. And they did obviously extremely well. But that well is an exception to the rule.
Interesting. Okay, so it's been going on for a while. So
Some
of our listeners are in partnerships with these men who were raised this way since, I grew up in the 70s basically. So, okay, so let's talk about this criticism thing, because I know for myself that I was not the golden child, right? And that when I was growing up, I was constantly criticized, right? And I felt like no matter what I would do, it wasn't enough. So I was like overachieving and overstriving. And this year, I've been married to my husband for like 11 years, but we've been together for like 16. That every time he says something, I internalize it as a criticism. And so I'm really working on not, right? And so when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like such a topic I'm interested in. So tell me, like, elaborating on, like, is it possible to rewire our brains so that we don't get this thing? How do we shift it, and what's the prognosis?
Yes. So if you respond to criticism by being defensive, that means that you are human.
Yay!
Right. And that historically speaking, the way we survived as humans is if we heard criticism, it was a potential enemy. So we survived by getting up our defenses.
Right.
Or even killing the enemy before the enemy kills us.
Right.
And that was functional for survival. It's just dysfunctional for love. And so when I started to do my role mate to soulmate workshops 30 years ago, I was inspired to do them because the people who were running couples workshops, this was the one thing they couldn't figure out, which was how to get couples in real time when they're back home to not be responsive defensively to criticism. And I would teach this in my workshops, but then what I did that was different was about a month or 2 months after the workshop, I would do a free follow-up phone call to every couple in the group.
Okay.
That would then tell me everything that worked and everything that didn't work. And what I found did not work about my workshops was that all my supposed wisdom about not being defensive in response to criticism, all that wisdom disappeared the moment a criticism appeared. So I said,
so they intellectually were like, okay, I got the rules. I know how to respond. I'm going to, willpower. And then they get in it. And then their amygdala, their lizard brain just goes into protection mode.
100% accurate.
Okay.
And so I realized that if I was going to contribute anything, I had to really figure out a way of actually changing that in practice in real life. And so I started, my logic was, if responding to criticism defensively was natural, I had to alter the biologically natural state. So I had
Okay.
couples, and so I'll give you the bottom line of what I ended up
Yeah.
doing. I had couples each week put on their calendar a time when they would have a caring and sharing 2-hour period.
Okay.
During that 2-hour period, they would start it with 2 appreciations to be done at a very specific level, different than appreciations are normally done. Share just one concern that their partner would experience, usually as a criticism rather than a concern, and then end it with 2 appreciations, and then they'd have a chance to respond to each other. So and what they would do with those, with before their partner shared their criticism, the person that was receiving the criticism would alter their natural biological state by doing 6 mindsets. So, for example, one mindset would be that your partner would say to you, what I call the love guarantee, which is that if I if I make you feel secure, that anything you say, no matter how much I disagree with it, no matter what tone you say it, even if it's sarcastic, or even if it's loud, even if it's angry, the angrier your tone, the more I disagree with it, if you still know that I will provide a secure environment for you to nevertheless say those things, the more secure you'll feel with me. Therefore, the more loved you'll feel by me. And therefore, the more love you'll feel for me.
So you say this is like what I'm creating the state right now.
Yes, I'm
You have
creating
the
this.
space that I, even though this is happening, like
Mhm.
I love you.
Yes, and I am going to create this secure space for you to say it, and I'm not going to come back and say, well, you said that, and this was wrong about that. So one of the mindsets you have to go through is a mindset on self-listening. Almost all people who are hearing a criticism are listening to themselves gather in their mind's eye and a response to that criticism. And so one of the alterations you do is to the moment you catch yourself doing that self-listening, you say to your partner, hold. And that is, I need to get back. I need to be centered on what
Mm.
you are saying from your perspective. And your partner never takes notes. Because your partner will later ask, is there anything I missed? And if anything was missed, you don't have to be responsible for taking notes and saying what was missed. Your partner will, the one that is sharing the criticism, will say, I think you missed this. And then you'll
So
work
there's
on
like a
it.
reflection back. So you
Yeah.
state your criticism, and then the person reflects back. So what something like, so
Yeah.
what I hear you saying is when I blah blah blah, it makes
Right.
you feel blah blah blah, and then you say like, okay, did I miss
Distort.
anything?
Did I distort first? The first thing is distort anything, because if anything
Oh,
is
that's a good word.
distorted, the other person is afraid to sort of say anything more that might be distorted. So you have to get all the distortions out of the way first, and then what is missed. And then when you get more sophisticated, I don't recommend this at the beginning.
Okay.
You ask your partner to add anything in addition to that, but you want to make it simpler at the beginning. And then I'll give you one more fun example.
I love these. This is so great. I'm gonna do it.
And by the way, when you read the Role Mate to Soulmate book, you will not likely be successful in doing this with your partner just from reading the book. So I persuaded my publisher to give away for practically free with the book an online couples video course that takes you and your partner through every step of this process, and then and answers questions that people are likely to ask afterwards. So you can actually do it with your partner, because the theory, the wisdom, disappears the moment the criticism appears. And so
Right.
this really requires practice. So another example of this is in the workshop, I have people sit back to back, and they have identical pieces of paper. And on the identical pieces of paper, they're going to write something that they're told ahead of time their partner will never see. And
Okay.
so the question I ask is, imagine your partner is about to be killed or to die, let's say in a car accident or drown. And you sense that in some way you have 100% chance of being able to save your partner's life. However, in the process, you have a 50% chance of losing your own life. Would you do it? Yes, no, uncertain. And
Damn, Dr. Warren, that's a big one.
that's
Okay.
a big one.
I'm like,
And the one thing that's eliminated is there's no children. Make believe there's no children involved.
okay.
And so then I take then all the men and all the women wrinkle up their pieces of paper into a little ball. They throw them into a corner of the room. The men pick up another man's paper. A woman picks up another woman's paper. So, and then I ask all the men to say whether or not they would do it or not. Remember, their partner will never see the answer, so they can be as honest as they wish to be.
Okay.
And so a little bit over 90% of the men say yes, they'd be willing to take a 50% chance of dying for their partner. A little bit over 80% of the women say they would be willing to do that. So the mindset is, if I'm willing to die for you, maybe I can listen to you.
That's so funny. Wait,
And
is it bad? Is it bad if I would say no?
no, no. I mean, it's not. There's nothing.
Yeah, I was
bad about
thinking
it.
about it. I'm being
Yeah,
honest. This is my show,
yeah.
right?
Yes, exactly.
I was thinking like my husband is super athletic and super strong,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not as. And that one of the I'm just doing therapy here. One of the things that happens is that he'll ask me for help to do
Mm-hmm.
something, but then when I get in there, he literally just does it himself because he does it 20 times faster. And I used to take it personally. We lived in an RV for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Oh,
took me
wow.
like 2 months to figure out. He'd be like, "Can you figure out this? Help me with the da da da. Look under the RV," and I would do it. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he'd like run out and he'd look and he'd come. Anyway, so I'm sitting here when you're talking, and I'm like, honestly, he would be like, "Oh my god, like." If you're here, I can't save myself. I have to worry about you. So I would just not do it because he'd probably live. And if I did it, I'd probably kill us both.
Well, there we go.
So what does that mean, Dr. Warren Farrell?
Well, one of the ways that you save a man is by, I mean, it's wonderful if you would be willing. I mean, you make, but no, part of that,
I'm willing to listen though.
part of that question was this. Part of the question was if you knew with 100% certainty you could save your partner. So
If I knew I could save him,
yes,
well, I don't know, man. I'm kind of self-centered, I guess, in that way.
yeah. Well, you're
Truth
part
about
of the,
Marnie. Now y'all know.
yeah, right, exactly. So, and that's a good, honest answer, and that's fine. Even though you may not be willing to physically risk your life to die for him, if you know that listening to him, no matter what he says and how he says it, would deepen your love, his love for you.
100%.
That's
why I'm working on this. That's why
Yeah.
that's why I'm really focused on that
Yeah.
for this year, is like to not respond from my child self.
Yes.
Right. And just really like, because it's interesting, and I'm sure everyone else who's listening can understand this. We've all been in that situation where, you know, you're with other people and your girlfriends or whatever, and later you're like, can you believe he said that? And they're like, it didn't sound weird to me. I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I know that I'm the only one who's interpreting it this way, like 70 to 80% of the time.
Yeah.
It's a me problem.
Yeah. Well, let's say it was a criticism and everybody else agreed that was a criticism and it was not a great way to put it. You see, so what I'm asking you to do in the Role Mate to Soulmate book, and as I said, you can't really practice this by just reading the book.
Yeah.
You really need to practice it with your partner you use the QR code, get the online video course, and actually practice it. But when you practice it, you'll begin to have your neurons change from practicing a new way of responding to criticism. My wife and I have been doing this for 30 years, and I and she both respond to criticism a lot better, just intuitively, quickly now than we used to, because we see that when there's a criticism, responding differently and giving that person a chance to really air out what's happening with them really works. But that's not true for us all the time.
Okay.
And so
Because you're human.
I'm human, exactly.
Right.
And the more you love somebody, the more vulnerable you feel when they criticize you. And as a man, I know if, the criticism, I interpret that on some deep level as being, well, maybe if she's criticizing me, she's not respecting me. And I know that women don't love anybody that they don't respect. So if I fear I'm going to lose the love, that's what, goes on the very deepest level. And if, she feels criticized by me, she doesn't feel protected by me. And that doesn't feel very good for her. And so one of the parts of the Role Mate to Soulmate book is how to maintain a conflict-free zone for the other 166 hours a week. So it's 2 hours a week. You're in the caring and sharing process where you learn how to appreciate each other at multiple levels of specificity and do this other process that I just mentioned. But the other 166 hours, I teach in the Role Mate to Soulmate book, how do you go about actually maintaining a conflict-free zone? And one of the ways is to visualize.
Okay.
So you visualize that, okay, I have two options here. My partner's just criticized me. I can respond to this criticism by arguing back. She said I left the dishes in the sink. I go ahead and say, well, you left them in the sink last week and I didn't say anything about it. And then she goes ahead and boom, 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 and we're in an argument.
It escalates, yeah.
So we can argue back and there's about 100% chance that we'll be hurt. Or we can wait till bring up our response to the caring and sharing time. And there's about 100% chance we'll be heard.
Nice. So you're you're managing your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You're aware of them.
With a visualization of a totally different and more positive outcome. But then the question becomes, well, what do you do between now and Sunday in terms of what's inside of you about that?
Exactly. What do you do?
So I then have couples journal at 4 stages of journaling. Stage number 1 is to just write, is what I call the self-righteous stage. Write out every reason you're right and every reason your partner's wrong. Get it out of your system.
Right.
And number 2 stage is to write down just one thing that your partner had a point about, that you can understand, that you can hear, that you can be real generous with.
Yeah.
Number 3, write down a number of things that you can change. And number 4, write it up as if you are writing it from your partner's perspective completely. You're role reversing. And so that's another, those are 2 of 6 ways to maintain that conflict-free zone. I'll share one more with you.
So let me just ask you about that.
Sure.
So that is to sort of create a deeper sense of empathy of how your partner felt in that situation. And so because I think this is a really important thing, because people will say, oh yeah, I'm empathetic, but empathetic is really like being in their shoes and emotionally trying to truly feel and understand their experience of the situation.
Absolutely.
So this allows you to get off your pedestal of always being right and really deepen into that empathy. And that is a healthier way so that you have understanding as well as righteousness.
100% accurate.
Okay.
And then another thing that people buy course because they sort of see how sincere and integrity oriented I am. They're always shocked by this suggestion, which is fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. So if you're upset with your partner, maybe go out and even while you're upset, get your partner some of her or his favorite flowers. And as you're getting those flowers, you're buying the flowers, you're imagining your partner thinking, oh, gee, that, so you were mad at me, but I can see that you're really sort of reaching out a peace offering.
Yeah. What does Gottman call it? Like the bid for affection or whatever, right? Yeah. Like a bid, right? You're like, we're in conflict, but I also love you.
Yes, exactly. And while you're visualizing your partner beginning to have that positive response, you're beginning to soften your energy toward your partner. And and this can be done not just with flowers, but, cooking somebody's favorite dessert,
Yeah.
or even just going by, I will oftentimes with, Liz, just lift her hair up and just kiss her on this side and this side of
Oh,
her neck.
that's so
And
cute.
it's just, she goes, oh,
I
thank you.
love that. That's so sweet. It's like a just like an affection. I think that's really interesting too, right? Because couples have arguments. I mean, you
Mhm.
know more than me, but I'm assuming that if someone never has any arguments or conflict in their relationship, that would be odd, right?
It would be odd, and it's also not a good sign. My former wife, my wife says that her former marriage, they never had arguments, but then there was lots going on that just wasn't being discussed, and the relationship, once those things came to the surface, that was the end of their relationship. And so, the absence of arguments can mean repression of feelings. And that oftentimes leads to people just disappearing, coming home later, working harder, doing something for the church that makes them feel good about themselves, or drinking, or getting, or um, just bursting out with a volcano comes out and suddenly you're being hit, when before you weren't even arguing. And
Right.
so all these things can be, the absence of arguments is not a sign of
Of a
a good
healthy,
relationship. Yeah.
yeah, because I think that's what's interesting is like in my book I call it normal marital hatred, which a therapist told me a long time ago, and I love it because it's normal. But I can be like, like I literally hate you, and then the next time I'm like, let's watch Love Island together, like because they're your person, right? But so I think this method really holds the space for you to be in your feelings, really cultivate empathy. Um, and then know that you're not silencing your needs or yourself. There's this an appropriate sacred time when everyone's off their phones, not stressed out, and you're having this meeting to hang out and have these conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It sounds so great. I'm getting this book. I'm going to watch the video. I'm going to do it with my husband. And
Yeah.
you all should too, because I think I'm shitting on all of you. But yes, I think it's a really great idea. So I really appreciate your approach. And I also really appreciate that you're doing it yourself, like you're walking the talk. There's nothing worse to me than, like someone who says like, do all this stuff. And then
Yeah.
they're not sharing their own examples in their life because, they're just a teller, not a doer.
Yes. Yes.
So last question. So if there's one thing that you could tell listeners to give them hope that they can really shift a dynamic in their relationship. Maybe it's been there for a really long time. Maybe they've given up. Maybe they're just like, oh, he's not capable of this or she's not capable of this. What do you say to them about making these changes and what it can mean for their relationship?
Well, practice being able to hear your partner's concerns and criticism. And when you see how magical that is, that will really enliven your relationship, but also fill the reservoir of love with knowing how to do appreciations of each other at least 5 or 6 levels of specificity. And to do it with consistency. So Liz and I set aside Wednesday nights to just spend just give each other 3 appreciations. But appreciations are often given very quickly and superficially.
Yes.
So if I'm at, let's say, Thanksgiving dinner and my wife has just cooked the turkey, saying something not like, oh, Liz is such a good cook, isn't she? But rather saying, Liz is a good cook, and then saying, she got I really love it, honey, how you got the skin on that turkey so crisp. How did you do that? So you're being much more specific about what you appreciate about her being a good cook. And you're also asking her to be the expert. And that allows her to shine in front of the group in a way that makes sense. But then take it to a deeper level and say, oh, how did you manage to both get the skin so crisp, even as you got the dressing so moist? And so you're making that your partner someone who is able to shine, not by her bragging about herself, but by you creating the setup for her to share something that is both educational but also focuses on her talents.
I love that. You know, it's funny is that when I was a young mom, I took like a parenting class, and that was one of the things, like, don't just say, "Oh, Susie, that drawing's so pretty." I trained my, like, I love the way you use red and orange in that picture. And it really just sparked my attention. And I love that color choice, right? Like to really, and so that you're saying the same thing.
Exactly. Very,
I
very
love
good.
it.
Good.
I
Excellent,
love it.
excellent example. Well, let's do this. If you wish to, you said you were going to go through the online video.
I want to do it. Yeah.
So
down.
When you do it, feel free to call me back and we'll do a show based on what you and your husband have actually.
Let's do it, Dr. Warren Farrell. I love it. Okay. This is going to be so fun. My word of the year is expansion. So I want to expand love. I want to expand more into my actual self and not my little self. Since I'm going to be 59, I think it's time to like be more adult in my life in more areas. So I love this idea. Imran's my producer. Imran, make a note. Thank you for being here. This episode, ladies, my gosh, and gents, if you're listening, talk about like practical tips and to-dos. Dr. Warren was so generous with his specific process and how you can do it. And so I want all of us, let's all get the book and make sure that we are living in more harmony in our life. You know, there's nothing like being right is like a fleeting moment of satisfaction. It's really about creating joy and harmony and being with this person that we picked and trying to be a better partner and create more love in our life. So many ways to do that. You can find access to the book and more about Dr. Warren. He's got a Facebook, he's got an Instagram, he's got a YouTube. And you can also get access to all of his books. Roommate to Soulmate, but also if you're interested in this boy crisis, make sure you check that out. You're such a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, I love the way you ask questions and integrate personal examples and are playful and smile and just. You're
look, you're giving me appreciation. I love it. Oh, he's so good. Do you have sons? I'm sure there's all these single women that are like, does Dr. Warren have any single sons that have learned how to appreciate?
Oh, thank you so much, Marnie.
All right. So the name of the show, Life Check Yourself. Rewind this. Share it with a friend. If you have a girlfriend who's like, my husband and my boyfriend, share this episode. So many practical tips and tricks and hacks. But whatever you do, remember, you are responsible. So life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Listen, if you're feeling stuck, I want you to know you're not alone, and you don't have to settle for it. I've created a free quiz to help you pinpoint what's draining your energy and exactly how you can fix it. So head over to decodeyourdestinyquiz.com and take the 60-second quiz right now. That's decodeyourdestinyquiz.com. And if you're ready to dive deeper, you can book a free no-obligation consultation at marnibatista.com/private coaching. That's Marnie, M-A-R-N-I, Batista, B-A-T-T-I-S, as in Sam, T-A.com/private coaching, all one word. Let's take the first step to creating a life you love on your terms. I'm Marnie, and I'll see you next time.